of course, the air quality right now is just horrendous.
It's terrible. Here we go. Welcome back, everyone. We're live on Facebook. Hi to everybody out there. I'm going to be sharing the show in just a little bit. We are having fun in here. Oh my gosh, we can even see ourselves in here and what we're looking at ourselves. And I can actually hear it in my ear as it's coming to me. I have with me Stephanie Maloney, and as she is, well, one of the owners. And we're going to talk about Premier Estate Planning today. But I welcome to the show. I also want to say you also sometimes bring your husband. Today it's you.
Solo.
And, you know, I just want you to tell everybody a little bit about you, what you do. And I want to kind of go deep on some of the different things because you're such an educator. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Carol.
And I can't wait to listen to some of the things that you say because I've learned so much every time you come on.
Well, thank you, Carol. Thanks for having me. So, Premier Estate Planning. I think one thing that makes us very different is that we operate as a document preparer firm. And many people, I meet people every day, and people don't know this program exists. And it's called the Arizona Certified Legal Document Program. It's monitored by the Arizona Supreme Court, and it came around in '03. So that is how my firm operates. While we do have an attorney that does our document preparation, we operate under that umbrella, if you will, since 2003. Previous to that, we were operating, I guess, in a traditional fashion with the lawyer. But what's great about the document program is that it allows the public to get estate planning and many other services at a more affordable price point, and I think in a more relaxed environment many times.
You don't always need an attorney. We've
Yeah.
talked a little bit about that, but with when they work with you, you've talked about how you kind of stay with your families and how you educate them, and you call it what?
Successor education. So.
And it's so neat because, you know, it's one thing to do it, and I'm one of them, and I've done mine, but it doesn't mean that they're done because they're never done, right? Especially if you've done it a long time ago.
Yeah, some people get dust on their documents. You know, they did it a while ago, as you mentioned, and now it's just sitting on the shelf because they checked that mark.
Got to get them out and have them looked at. But really, with you is you don't let that happen, okay? With your clients because you're with them every step of the way, and you educate them in that with that successor education. And I want to talk a little bit about that because not everybody just does.
Well, the successor education comes after a family has decided what they're doing.
Okay.
It's to educate their people that they've chosen to make decisions for them when they can.
Right.
But my initial part of the process, when somebody comes to me, we're going to do education because many people don't even understand what estate planning is about. They have no idea what they need. So we're going to give them the education to understand the differences between all the different kinds of documents that there are. Not everything is for everyone.
Right.
So it kind of depends where they're at, what they need.
And one of the things that you said, and every time we talk, every time we can almost come up with a scenario, in every situation, how someone might not have thought that could happen, and that way you might want to make sure that your documents are taken care of. And one of them, if you don't mind me saying, we were talking earlier today about your husband, how he fell, and you were saying that if he hit his head, and which could have happened.
Right, just an accident in our backyard, you know, and I think that's the one thing that becomes clear to me every time I sit with a new client, somebody that's potentially hiring us. Nobody thinks about becoming incapacitated. We all kill ourselves off, you know, and it is kind of, you can laugh about it now, but it's true when you think about that because none of us want to be in a wheelchair having other people have to take care of us when we were previously not in that state, but it happens. And, you know, just as my husband, he hurt his leg, but he could have just as easily hit his head. And now I could be dealing with a husband that has a head injury. And these documents that we've had in place for years could suddenly be very useful to me. And,
Absolutely.
you know, even being in the business, we don't think we're going to have a problem. It's going to be somebody else. We have the same gift of optimism that everyone else has. We just should be more prepared than the public because we know better, but that doesn't mean anything.
No, but you know what though? You are, you know, because I know you are. I know you would never let that happen because you're all about it. Every time when we talk, I mean, I can be sitting with you and something can happen. We'd be talking about something completely different. You'll say, you know what? That's where somebody might need to make sure that they have their plans in order. And this is so important. I love talking about this because I myself am one who, you know, we put things off. That's the one thing that we do. We put it off to the last second. We don't want to talk about it. But I think, of course, making sure that you have things taken care of when you pass away is so important. But I think you like to kind of also narrow in on the, well, what if you're incapacitated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if? And one of the stories that we talked about, you just started telling me, so we're going to go into it further, is a gentleman who, his son, who was having issues. Let's
Yeah,
talk
he
about that.
has addiction issues.
Mhm.
And they've chosen to place him as one of their decision makers if something happens with their other child. And, you know, his attitude was kind of this: years of frustration dealing with their child. And, you know, he kind of said, well, I'm not going to be here. If my other son's not here, my wife is gone, you know what? I don't care. And I can understand and appreciate that. You know, some people will jokingly say they don't care. But I said, what if there is an accident with 3 of you, your other son's left behind, he's not doing well. You know, he has moments of time where he's doing well and he's engaged with the family, and then he disappears for bits of time. I said, what if you guys are in an accident and you have an incapacitation, and he's the one that's supposed to be monitoring everything and, you know, arranging your care and all of this. And, you know, he just kind of,
His eyes probably opened up pretty wide.
he couldn't say he didn't care. He didn't really know what to say,
Mhm.
because he knew that was something that could happen.
It's easy to say you don't care, but you know you do care, right? We know that you don't that we care.
And I know he cares.
Exactly.
It's just a frustration. And,
Exactly.
And you have to just, as my job is to run people through scenarios, I have to take them down all these pathways that they may not want to go, just so they can go, oh, well, that's true. That could be a scenario that could unfold.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you work with people, how much of the documentation and all of those that do you take care of? Is it everything? You get them filed and all of that? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the process begins, you know, someone decides they're ready to kind of start the ball rolling. We're going to do either a virtual education on the phone or in person, depending on what they would like. Work with people all over the country, so it really doesn't matter to us. It's whatever they're comfortable with. Do the education. Generally, at the end of the education, people are pretty confident about the decision regarding what documents now they understand that they probably need. It's up to them. I'm not allowed to give my opinion. I just give them facts, tell them the differences, and they come to their conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So we draft their documents based on their decisions. They review them. Once they review, they come in, we do a signing. We have to meet for the signing. We can't do DocuSign yet
Mm-hmm.
in this space.
Mm-hmm.
We sign. We do it usually deliveries are 2 hours, because we're going through everything. You know, they're not going to remember everything at the end of the signing because it's overwhelming, but we're taking them through it slowly. And then at the end of that, give them a couple days, and then we come back together, not usually physically on the phone, and now we talk about our next steps.
And usually what's that?
Well, depending on the documents they've chosen, we have to get sometimes documents on file with particular firms to make sure now they're going to be useful, because sometimes it's not enough to keep a document in your binder. Sometimes you need to get it approved wherever it may be needed in the future. So it's not always enough to just have your book of documents and you're like, got that done.
I know.
Yeah.
This is why mine is out right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, you're like
I'm
this.
telling you now. And
You have something happen and your daughter's like, well, mom's got her documents. Great. She goes to use something and they're like, this is 10 years old.
Mhm.
We have a policy. We only take documents that are 5 years old. And now your daughter's stuck kind of in the same position that someone who didn't even have any documents is.
Well, I don't know about anybody else out there, but I have mine out ready for a second opinion. And I think that's where I would love for you to come in and sit down with me and say, okay, make sure that you have this. Because, yes, it was done a few years ago, and there's different rules. That changes also.
Mm-hmm.
And I think mostly for everyone, it's the HIPAA laws, really, that have changed and made things so much more difficult for, God forbid, right?
That's definitely true for the medical decision making.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people would assume that if their 19-year-old child has a car accident and they get that horrible phone call, they show up at the hospital, they assume they're going to be able to go in and see their child, make decisions if needed, and that is not true.
Right.
The 19-year-old needs a healthcare power of attorney for you to be able to legally make decisions for them.
We want to make sure that everyone is taken care of, and that's why you come on the show and you're here to educate people out there and nudge them. You know, I love watching your things on Facebook as well. You always put up different videos, different things that you're working on, different families that you've even worked with.
Mm-hmm.
People, you need to get this in front of you as much as possible because it's so very important. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk further. Their number to call is 602-371-8898. You can also go up on their website, which one?
PremierAZ.net.
It's easy, premieraz.net, or write the number down, give them a call, let them do a consultation with you at 602-371-8898. we're staying live on Facebook for right now.
Alright.
And I didn't see it with all this writing, but, and I wanna talk about that also when we come back to live, is that we're talking right now about HIPAA and also the children that obviously, God forbid, but also, people's money, banking, they also have different rules too, that they have to make sure that if I'm not correct, and you can tell us kind of what to do with that. Have you found people where, cause the money doesn't it's not as easy. I remember my father, there was like a 10-day hold on stuff. And 10 days is a long time when you gotta get things done.
Right. Well, and I think the big one for the general public is most families are saving in 401k type vehicles when they work for companies. Those monies are individual, even though the household, a husband and wife, they see it as a collective pile of money. The law sees it as an individual's money. And even your spouse can't manage or control those dollars without paperwork if this person's now incapacitated. You could be the primary beneficiary on these dollars, but they're not dead. They're incapacitated, and now you have to go through court processes to put paperwork in place that would have cost very little to do up front, but now because you have to do it through the courts and with attorneys, the costs are much higher.
Well,
And people just assume, I'm their spouse, I'm the beneficiary. And we get that all the time. And people, again, they're not thinking about becoming incapacitated. They just assume if they have an accident, they're not gonna be here anymore, and then death is easy.
Right.
And it would be, but that's not, we don't die
It's
the
not
first
as
time
easy, and we have to think about that not only just for ourselves, but really for everybody else. It's for them, making it much easier on them. I know it was very difficult with certain things like that with my when my father passed, and that's a long time for something to be put on hold where you need to take care of things, or I don't even think, I think his cremation was on hold too, for some reason, I can't remember.
Well, when you're dealing with the documents, you're dealing with either a sick individual or someone who's passed away, so it's emotional. You got a lot of stuff going on with your loved one.
Right.
Now you don't wanna have
Oh
to
my
be
God.
worried about
And
this part of it.
And for that beneficiary that's supposed to be doing it, it's not an easy particular job to do.
Especially, and that's the real function of the successor education, is to just give them a little knowledge, because I'm dealing with a lot of younger successors now because their parents are putting them in play, like my kids, like your daughter. They're not gonna, I'm hoping it's gonna be years before the documents are being used.
Right.
They're not gonna remember everything, but they're gonna remember the big details, the bigger picture.
Right.
And of course, always know someone they can go to. I'm gonna be really disappointed if mine doesn't perpetuate to someone, I want it to go on, and I know I'm not gonna be here forever.
Right.
So, but they're gonna have someone they can call and get the information they need, so they don't get taken advantage of.
So welcome back, everyone. We're talking with Stephanie Maloney, and she is one of the owners of Premier Estate Planning, and we've been talking a little bit about, obviously estate planning and how it's so important. But we, like you said, we kill ourselves off, and how important it is. Yes, it is to make sure that all of your documents are in place. If it's not for you, it's for your loved ones. But more so than anything is really what you've been talking about, is a little bit about what, God forbid, happens if you get incapacitated.
And a lot of people don't think they need estate planning because it sounds so grand. If anybody has a better name for it, please let me know, because I've been trying to come up with one, because estate planning sounds like you need to be wealthy and old, and that's the assumption because people see in movies and television. Estate planning is for every adult. And that young family that's just getting started, that lives in an apartment, they don't have a home yet, but they have a couple children, I hope they have life insurance, they have an estate. And something else they probably have, depending on where they work, are 401ks. Most people, that's where they're saving for their retirement. And they're gonna have a beneficiary on these contracts, because they're individual. I have a 401k, my husband has a 401k. They're not ours, they're each individual person's. And you have beneficiaries. But when I'll network and I'll tell somebody, they might say, oh, I've got all my stuff. And I'm like, great. Do you happen to have your financial power of attorney on file with the custodian that has your IRA dollars, your 401k money? Fidelity, Vanguard, whoever. There's 100 different custodians. And usually people will look at me and they're like, well, I think so, I have a beneficiary. Beneficiaries come into play when someone is passed. We want to make sure people have control under all circumstances, and the document that's needed in that situation is a financial power of attorney. And those are accepted like checks. A firm could deny a brand new document if their legal department doesn't agree with it. So when is the best time to learn if that's going to be the case for the document you have? You want to know now while you're confident. They want the account holder to present that document to them and say, hey, are you going to take this document? If something happens, you know my wife is coming, followed by my oldest child, and then this person. And do you have a form that I need to sign too? You don't want to get that answer, me as the spouse now going to submit the paperwork we thought we had it all together, and they just simply say, this is too old, we're not taking it. And he also didn't sign our paperwork.
All right, and what are you going to do if that happens? Right now, what you want to do is write this number down. Maybe it's today, maybe it's, whatever. You need to make sure you take all this information. It's unbelievably great information for people that are listening, and it could be you, even if it's your parents.
Mm-hmm.
You're driving around and your parent, and you say to your parents, you know what, let's make sure that this is an open conversation.
Well, so many people don't want to talk about this.
Exactly.
They think they're going to upset their parents. Okay, so I'm almost 50. My parents are 70. I meet lots of people who they're either an only child, maybe there's a couple siblings, and I'll say to them, do you know if your parents have documents? And they're like, oh, we don't talk about that, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said, well, most people that I work with, 90% of people pick their children to be their successors.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty safe to say, if you guys have a nice relationship, you or your sibling are probably the first person, and you don't even know if your parents have documents.
Have that conversation.
So when something
firsthand
happens,
how important
that's the
it is.
first thing they're trying to figure out. Where is everything? What do they have? And that's part of the successor education process is let's get everything together. Let's talk about it now while there is no problem, so that when that time comes, the worst thing you're dealing with is your sick loved one or passed away, not like, do we have all of our ducks in order? You know that's in order. You can take care of your family and yourself and your mental well-being, and this stuff will work itself out because you have it in order.
602-371-8898. It's premieraz.net. They work, you said, nationwide.
We do.
And again, please, anyone who's single out there, I want to talk to single moms out there. How about people, you think you do, it's, oh, I don't need this because I don't have money. And I don't care, my ex-husband says that all the time. I've been pushing him to come to you too, and to get it done. And he says the same thing, well, I don't have a lot of money, I don't need to have that. Well, that's not true.
My friend, her sister, was just found in a parking lot here in town. She's 54 years old. She was just laying beside her car. Have no idea what happened to her. She had a stroke. Now we know it's been 10 days out. We have been in the process of talking about her documents. She's one of those persons that definitely says, I don't have any money. That's why it's even more important, because if you don't have money to do it, now your loved ones come forward. Her sister, she's had to foot the bill to get the documents in place, because for 3 days they wouldn't talk to anybody because she didn't have a health care power. So her sister had to go through an emergency guardianship to get the paperwork in place to allow, basically, to be able to make the decisions, and she had to pay for it.
And that's not easy to have to deal with that, especially when she's upset. I mean, she's dealing with. Also, when you mentioned that too, people that don't have a lot of money, people that you had somebody else younger. You had mentioned just before you came on the show today about a young girl that came home and something happened. Her husband, they found her in the apartment or whatever.
Yeah, she drowned in her pool. She hit her head. So the same weekend that my husband injured himself in my backyard, this lady met that same fate in her 30s. Complete accident.
It's a weird year, you guys, and a lot of stuff is happening. Take care of yourselves.
Absolutely.
Make sure that you're taking care of it.
And I would just encourage people, stop thinking about it, stop Googling, because you can really, there's so much information available and it's so confusing. Every document that we do, each person has a different title. It gets so confusing for the general public to try to start reading this stuff. It'd be like us trying to read electrical engineering guides or something and figuring it out. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Just have a meeting with somebody that you have some confidence in, hear what they have to say, and usually what happens is people start thinking. And they're like, oh, that makes sense, and they understand the different positions a little better and why it's so important.
Again, they do free consultations. She sits down and educates you. It's all about that. And she'll do a second opinion. I can't wait. Seriously, it's so important for everybody to make sure that even if you think you have it done, have it checked out. Make sure it's up to date. That's what's so important and so easy to do.
It's a good idea when someone moves to a new state just to get a document review. You may have had your documents. Chances are your documents are absolutely fine. You may need to deal with a healthcare document or something else, but if you use a revocable trust, they're good around the world. So don't be concerned that I've had people come to me and say, oh, somebody told me my trust wasn't good here. That's not true. So, you know, if it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't.
Well, here's the thing. What she does is educate you step by step before the process, but also especially after the process with
and
the family.
You need to like the person that you're working with, too. That's part of the first meeting. You have to see if you have a little synergy, you know, with the person, because it's a
and you guys have
process.
to have synergy with her because she's so nice and so soft-spoken, and so what you're there for everybody else is that it's all about just making sure everybody's protected, and you know all the ins and outs, and that's what you don't try and do it on yourself. You cannot go up on Google and just try and fill out these things, because you know what, you're going to be sorry in the long run. That number to call again, it's 602-371-8898. It's premieraz.net. They do free consultations. They work nationwide. You can also check her out on Facebook. All sorts of information that you put out all the time for just in cases. You know.
And I'll be starting to do virtual webinars this month, later in the month, and going to be doing them monthly. So those will be posted on the website and on Facebook.
For you, when somebody talks to you, what is the first question that they usually say to you? Like, what's their concerns?
Kind of depends on their age. You know, when I'm dealing with a younger family, it's about their kids. And no one, I remember this even when we were trying to figure out who could be our guardian for our boys. You know, nobody's ever going to be you. So for the younger family, it's always that struggle of like, who would I want my children to be raised by if I weren't here? Then a lot of times if I'm dealing with a 70 and up, a lot of times it's family issues they're still struggling with. Children they're dealing with that they have concerns about.
How about us single moms that don't have, the father's not around? You certainly may not want to do that. I know for me that was a big struggle, and my kids were younger, and even now, even though they might be in 24, 25, mentally they're not. I don't feel that way, you know. Mm-hmm. But how about that?
Well, I know for single parents, a lot of times the single parents that I work with, the reason they come to the table is because they don't want the assumed guardian for their child that they share together to be in charge of the funds that would be left behind for their child. Mm-hmm. And they want to make sure that that's not going to happen. And when you do the proper planning, that absolutely can take place.
That's what she's here for, is to make sure that the proper planning is done. That number again, 602-371. It's 8898 premieraz.net. They do free consultations, and it's all about the successor education. That's what she's all about. She specializes in that. Number one document people should have.
Powers of attorney.
Yeah, that's what you said before.
Healthcare and financial.
Right.
You really need both.
Right. And for people, you also mentioned that you hope that everybody has a life insurance policy, especially if you have children.
Yeah, if you're a single parent, that's where that comes in. Like, you may not think you have an estate, but many people don't understand that minors, anyone under 18, they cannot legally inherit money. Mm-hmm. So when they're left dollars through the use of a will, or if a parent didn't have documents, it's going to go into a guardianship and conservatorship process. So that's part of the education process too, so parents don't know, and they need to be educated as to why this might be better than that based on the age of their children.
And again, let's talk about real quickly what your final words would be for somebody that might get incapacitated.
Get your people in place. You know, it's a very hard thing for single people, because if you do become incapacitated and someone's caring for you, they are now taking over your financial life and using your dollars for your care. And you have to have the right person in place to make sure that if you do recover, you're still going to have something left.
I'm going to tell you now, I have listened to a lot of things that you've said at times that you've been on, and I haven't implemented some of the things that you have said to be sure of, because I too am that single mom out there, mm-hmm. and I'm older mom. I'm single older mom, and I think about that, and God forbid, that's what it's all about too. God forbid. It's not just about, making sure that you take care of yourself when you pass away. It's God forbid. 602-371-8898, premieraz.net. So